Stay tuned in this podcast to know more about 7 challenges to get a job in Australia as an overseas engineer. Hi, I'm Gerson Ida, founder of www.engineersinaustralia.com, a website to share valuable information and content to help you to validate your engineering qualification in Australia, also to share the day-to-day of an engineer and engineering opportunities in Australia. Since I started to publish my videos and content, I have received innumerable messages from overseas engineers in how to get a job in Australia. And after thinking in which ways I could help, I've decided to share my experience and knowledge of my 14 years in Australia as an overseas engineer. So, as promised, I am starting a podcast series about how to have better chances to get a job in Australia as an overseas engineer, which I hope will give you some useful information in your journey to put your foot in the Australian market as an engineer. So let's go to the 7 challenges then. The first challenge is to have the legal right to work in Australia. You will need a visa that allows you to work legally in Australia. So it's a good idea to talk to a migration agent or read carefully the Home Affairs website to understand what you need to do to have a permission to work legally in Australia. The second challenge is the validation of your qualification as an engineer. Majority of the employers will request you to prove that your engineering qualification is recognized by Engineers Australia. If your qualification can be fit within the first 4 pathways to recognize your qualification, then it's probably a little bit easier, and they are: recognize Australian qualification under the Washington Accord, under the Sydney Accord, and under the Dublin Accord. Then, recognition is simple and not very difficult. The Migration Skills Assessment booklet from Engineers Australia explains the process to do it. However, if your qualification does not fall under the first 4 pathways, then the 5th pathway is through the CDR, Competency Demonstration Report, which the process is simple, but is not very easy to put together, as it requires continuing professional development, the writing of 3 career episode reports, and matching competencies, the summary statement. The third challenge is a temptation of hiring a company or someone to write these reports on your behalf while you're validating your qualification, which is an unethical behavior and is a serious risk of being caught by plagiarism and the application not to be approved by Engineers Australia and also be banned for 12 months of a new application. Engineers Australia can also report your details to the Home Affairs Department for future investigation. The fourth challenge is fluency in English and will depend on each person's English level, but a large number of overseas engineers that are from non-English speaking countries may struggle with this. For the validation of your engineering qualification, there is a need to obtain a minimum score in an English test, IELTS, TOEFL, or PTE, in 4 bands: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. The 5th challenge is the preparation of the resume or CV and the cover letter. In some countries, the standard of the CV and cover letters are different from the standard here in Australia. And during the recruitment processes I've participated, I've seen so many mistakes just because candidates kept using probably the standards they are used to. And it meant that their CV and cover letter did not raise interest of the recruitment panel, and unfortunately, they've been unsuccessful in their applications. The 6th challenge is when you are considered to be overqualified. Just because you have a master's degree and have worked in senior positions back in your country, some employers and recruiters may classify you as being overqualified, and this can be an issue in your journey to get into the Australian market. And this can be very frustrating, I know. So you know that you can do the job very well, and with your extra qualification, you would have been a great asset to the company. The 7th challenge could be the lack of knowledge of local experience and Australian standards and technical specifications. As much as engineering standards are similar in most countries, the lack of knowledge of local standards and specifications can prove to be an obstacle, as employers may be looking to hire an engineer that can hit the ground running and good local networking to advance the business. Well, obviously there are more challenges to be faced, but those ones are the ones that, in my experience, are the top 7 challenges that most of overseas engineers will face when trying to get a job in Australia. If you have any suggestions for future themes for these podcasts, please send me your ideas or write a comment in my Facebook post about these podcasts. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again in our next podcast. Bye bye.